Head Coach Mike Woodson and Indiana basketball open up Big Ten play by hosting Maryland.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen each and every day, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege to get started. Indiana basketball opening up Big Ten play, and they host Maryland on this Friday night as Indiana 5-1 on the season so far, Maryland 4-3, and this is the conference opener for them. Purdue on the road at Northwestern tonight as well. So a couple of good games to open up conference play here in the Big Ten. We'll go over who has to play well, things to look out for, and of course the injury updates for Indiana basketball as they get ready to host Maryland here in Bloomington at Assembly Hall. I appreciate you making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. Be sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video. We're inching close to 1,500 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I would love to hit that before the turn of the new year. That would be massive for us. And so be sure you do that. Turn on notifications wherever you are. And remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Indiana hosting Maryland in the Big Ten opener. Can the Hoosiers start off 1-0 in Big Ten play? That would be nice, huh? Wouldn't that be nice to start off Big Ten play 1-0 with a chance to go 2-0 on the road at Michigan? We've talked a lot about this game, but let's break it down a little bit as Maryland comes to town. You look at the Terrapins right now, they are 4-3, and it's not the prettiest 4-3 that you've seen this season. They opened up with Mount St. Mary's with a win, 68-53. Then they lost 3 straight games to Davidson, 64-61, UAB, 66-63, and then on the road at Villanova, which is a really good basketball team, 57-40. They then have now turned it around with 3 straight wins over UMBC, 92-68, South Alabama, 68-55, and they just dropped a 100 points, is what I was trying to say. 100 points, triple digits. There we go. Triple digits on Ryder, 103-76. So maybe they're feeling a little better about themselves offensively because so far this season, the offense has not been all that great for Maryland, and they just put 103 points on the board in a college basketball game. I don't care who the opponent is. I think that's pretty good. But they're on the road taking on Indiana. They have Penn State in their second Big Ten game, so that's kind of interesting. But 4-3 this season, and really the folks you need to keep an eye out for when it comes to this Maryland team, I think there's a couple of them. Jameer Young, their guard, who averages 16 points a game. Julian Reese, the forward, who averages 15 points a game, who is going to be matched up with Kel'el Ware in this ball game, who will really challenge him size-wise inside. He's 6'9", 230. He is going to be matched up with Kel'el Ware pretty much this entire game. And so I think a huge part of tonight's matchup is the foul trouble game, the foul game, right? Who can stay out of foul trouble between Julian Reese and Kel'el Ware? Because I think whoever can stay out of foul trouble is going to have the better chance to win as a team and those guys as a whole, because you look at it, both of these guys can get to the free throw line, and we know Kel'el Ware has been shooting pretty well from the free throw line, and Reese isn't too bad himself. So I don't know. I mean, he shoots, 66% right now, so not bad. But I'm not talking from the free throw line. I'm talking as an impact on the floor. I mean, both of these teams are going to be better when their top big men are on the floor. That just makes sense, right? But then also, I also look at this from a depth perspective, because I think Indiana is a much deeper team than Maryland is. And so do they have to go to their bench early, and can Maryland trust their bench? And on the flip side, for Indiana, if you have to put Kel'el Ware on the bench early with 2 fouls in the first half, then you have to rely on Mackenzie and Mgbako. You have to rely on other guys coming off the bench, and it's probably going to be multiple guys to step into that role. So hopefully you stay out of that situation. But I think this is two teams that haven't been overly sexy on offense this season and are looking to kind of prove something in this game against, for Maryland, I would say it's probably the, second best team they've played on their schedule behind Villanova. And for Indiana, probably the third or fourth best team they've played on the schedule this year. So overall, this is a winnable game for Mike Woodson and the Hoosiers. It is a winnable game without a doubt, especially since you're at home. You're in Assembly Hall. You should not lose this game. You shouldn't. You should not lose this game. Now, I know there are some injury issues that we're going to get to later on, but from a pure basketball perspective, the Hoosiers should not lose. They should win. And according to ESPN, Indiana's favored right around 2.5, 3 points, give or take, depending on where you look. I think Indiana should be favored by more than that. I really do. I think the Hoosiers should be favored by 6 or 7, and I think they could win by double digits. But if they don't play well and the guards have their way for Maryland, I think it could be a long night. And I could see this being a track meet. I really could. Comes down to shooting as well. Can Indiana make open shots? Can Maryland knock down their open shots if Indiana gives them some? Because let's be honest, to this point, the Hoosiers are giving them open shots. So overall, I'm excited for this game. I really, really am. I'm excited for the step up in competition for Indiana because you've played some really good teams and you've got some good ones coming up. In Maryland, I don't know where they'll end up. Probably bottom half of the Big Ten. I was going to say bottom third, but I don't know if that's 100% true yet. I don't know. But this is a good opportunity for Indiana to get off to a hot start in Big Ten play. You're coming off of a nice performance against Harvard, another decent performance against Louisville, right? You're on a 2-game win streak. Let's feed off of that a little bit. And let's see if Kel'el Ware can build off of his career performance just a game ago. Can Indiana get down to him? They're going to have to. They're going to have to get to him. And then when they collapse on Kel'el Ware, I've said this before, that's where he becomes a facilitator. And I think he is crucial in this basketball game for Indiana and the Hoosiers to get a win over Maryland. Coming up on the show, we'll talk some more who has to play well for Indiana, maybe outside of Kel'el Ware offensively and defensively, if you want to try and take down the Terrapins on your home floor, plus the injury problem for Indiana basketball and what that means for this team for this game and moving forward. We'll talk about that here on the show in just a second. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Well, Indiana taking on Maryland in the Big Ten opener, and some other players that I think have to play well for the Hoosiers to A, be in this game, and B, to win this game, because I think they can do both. It revolves a lot around the guard play. Xavier Johnson, I look at Trey Galloway, I look at CJ Gunn off the bench. I love that kid. I've talked about him, seems like just about every show, every episode, and I do. I love that guy. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's an impact, especially if Xavier Johnson can't go, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But think about this too. Malik Reneau has to have a good game, and I think he can. I think Malik Reneau does have a good game here because Ware is going to be kind of bodied up with another big man. This is a perfect opportunity for Malik Reneau to go off, to have a day, to have one of those high efficiency days like we've seen him have, right? 7 of 10 from the field, get to the free throw line a bunch, have a bunch of rebounds. And I think Indiana can do that today too. I think they can use their size, use their speed, and really just their athleticism and out hustle, out talent this Maryland team. Because come on, let's be real for a second. Indiana is a better coached team than Maryland. Indiana's a more talented team than Maryland. And Indiana's just a better team than Maryland. And if you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to win this game. How can Mackenzie Mgbako get involved again coming off his best performance in college? Remember, he had 18 points against Harvard, 18 points on 7 of 13 shooting. It's time for him to really grow. And in a game where he is going to have a size advantage and have a skill advantage, Mike Woodson and the Hoosiers have to use that offensively. But on that end of the floor, we're going to talk defense in just a second. Offensively, you got to move the basketball. Move the basketball, get it into Kel'el Ware, and if he's bodied up, find Malik Reneau, right? Find Mackenzie Mgbako. Those two guys should have another big day like they did against Harvard. And I know this is a little bit of a step up, but there's no reason for them not to have a good game here. And then I look at your guards. Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, CJ Gunn, Gabe Cupps, if he gets significant minutes like he has been this year. Get those guys the basketball. To be honest, I really don't care in this game if the guards go off or not. I know I've complained a lot about them, or maybe not a lot, but I have, right? I've complained about the scoring. You look at the last game, it was Galloway and Johnson with 7 total points, and I know Xavier Johnson got hurt, but Galloway, he'll get his whenever. But this isn't a game where Indiana has to knock down just a ton of threes, in my opinion. I think if you can go inside and dominate the paint, that's where Indiana has the advantage. That is Indiana's strong suit. If you try to get in a shootout, you're going to lose. Like, you are going to lose if you try to just sit back there and shoot a bunch of threes with this Maryland team. Like, we know Indiana, they can't shoot. They can't shoot the three right now. Are we serious? We got to be a little realistic here. And so I think total Indiana has just so many advantages in this game. The question becomes, can they take advantage of those? Keep their foot on the gas. I'd love to see a nice start. Use the fans, right? You're going to be at home. Use the fans to your advantage if you're the Hoosiers here, and get off to a hot start. Maybe even build a nice 8 to 12 point lead and then hold it. Keep it. Don't let it go. If you can do that, man, I think Indiana has a really good chance here. But at the same time, I think Maryland's going to be a motivated group. I think they're going to be a motivated bunch. I think it's a team coming off a 100-point performance in their last game that wants to play well offensively, which gets us into what Indiana has to do well defensively. And I mentioned the foul trouble already. Not that Indiana's had a huge problem with that this year, I don't think, but you've got to avoid it here. If Kel'el Ware gets in foul trouble, who steps up? Who steps up defensively? Will it be Mackenzie Mgbako, who has seemed to be just a step or two behind and kind of ball watching at times? Will it be Malik Reneau? And what happens if he gets in foul trouble? Then you're in trouble at that point. Maryland's not a good shooting team. Go look at their stats. It's not good. But any team is good if you leave them open and give them enough chances. And they're coming off a nice performance. So if you're the Hoosiers, don't give them opportunities, man. Don't let this be shoot around 2.0, where they shoot around early and then you let them do it again in the basketball game. If you do that, you're in trouble. This is conference play, man. This is conference play in the Big Ten. It's time to get serious. It's time to focus. It's time to play some basketball, and it's time to play for 40 minutes of basketball. I'm saying from the starting tip to the final buzzer, you've got to play and finish out teams. Whether you're up by 10 or down by 10, you've got to finish games. I think Indiana will do that here. Defensively, you've got to rotate properly. You have to communicate. That's a huge issue on this team so far this season. It's just the lack of communication on back screens and ball screens and switching on and off of defenders where two players go to one player with the basketball, like two defenders go to the basketball. There goes the other player. He's wide open. There it is. There's a three or a dribble drive when he gets the ball. Like, those things have to be fixed. And I'm hoping, since there's been a nice break here in the action, that Indiana has worked on those things and they've gotten better at those things. And they're just overall a better defensive team. The Hoosiers have all the advantage here. Offensively, defensively. I think on that side of the floor, I think if you can force some turnovers, get out and run. I've said that all year. That if the Hoosiers can force some turnovers and get out and run with the likes of Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, who finishes really nice in transition, throw up some alley-oops to Mackenzie and Mgbako, Kel'el Ware, Malik, Reneau. Come on, man. Those guys are a show. You could put on a show for your fans at Assembly Hall with those guys in transition, but we just haven't seen that very often. And that'll get them going. That'll get them confident and fired up. And it'll also take your opponent just completely out of their game. Whether it be forced turnovers like steals and blocks and strips, right? Or it be unforced turnovers, just bad passes and throwing it away, shoe shiners, that type of thing. I would like to see Indiana get those turnovers, get the live ball turnovers, and turn those into points, whether it be in transition or in the half-court offense. I think getting the ball inside and dominating the paint, dominating the boards, and making a bunch of free throws, right? Step one is you got to get there. Step two is you got to knock them down at the charity stripe. Defensively, communicate, rotate, don't leave open shooters. I think it's that simple tonight for Indiana. And I think they'll do those things. And ultimately, if the team is fully healthy, I think Indiana wins this basketball game. But will they be healthy? That's the question that we have to ponder when it comes to this Indiana team, because the major concern right now is Xavier Johnson. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a second. Want to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Drop them a subscription, folks. It is really, really cool what Locked On is doing. And so they would appreciate you doing that for them. Really cool content. Go and check them out and subscribe on YouTube. Well, Indiana has some injury concerns going into the matchup against Maryland. Two players that were worried, that we were worried about when it came to injury, was Malik Reneau and Xavier Johnson. We've gotten some updates thanks to head coach Mike Woodson. Says Malik Reneau is ready to go. He will play against Maryland, which I think is huge. I said earlier, I think he can have a big, big night offensively and defensively if he truly is 100%. And I look for him to be aggressive in this game. It was all of those back issues that he was having. And those are scary, man. Those are scary. There's no doubt. So we pray and hope that he doesn't re-aggravate those. We pray and hope that none of that happens and he can go out and be the Malik Reneau that we know and love. And I think he can. I think he'll have a great game tonight. The other one, though, the other big issue and the big injury scare is Xavier Johnson, who has been dealing with that ankle injury. He got banged up and didn't play for the second half, and that's concerning. Luckily, there's been a nice break. That was on Sunday. A nice break in the action, right? Nice break in the action. Hopefully there's no breaking of bones or anything, but a nice break in the action between the last game and this game. And I think for Indiana, that's a huge, huge bonus for Xavier Johnson to kind of get healthy. As far as we know, at the time of this episode, he is still up in the air on whether he plays against Maryland. If he does not play against Maryland, I think it's kind of time to worry, because the question remains, who steps up in his place? Who is that guy to step in and take over the role of point guard? Do you slide Trey Galloway over and let him do most of the ball handling? I don't know about that. He does have the experience factor, which I think benefits him. Do you bring in Gabe Cupps, the freshman who's playing 20 minutes a game right now? He's not a real offensive threat, but I think has proven he can handle the ball, and he's not going to, let's say this, Gabe Cupps isn't going to get you beat, but he's not going to do anything to really beat anybody yet. I think he'll get there. I just think he's kind of out there for now. He plays really hard on defense. He's an effort guy, which you love, but I just don't know if he is your starting point guard potential, especially in the Big Ten right now, but he may be your best option. Or is it CJ Gunn, who has come off and played with high energy? A stat patter is not the right word, but he's a stat filler, right? He gets all sorts of stats: points, rebounds, assists, turnovers, blocks. I mean, you name it, he's got one somewhere, right? He gets all of them. He forced turnovers and all that. So I love CJ Gunn. I hope he gets some significant playing time regardless. But if Xavier Johnson can't go, yeah, I mean, that's the debate, is who is it and where do they go, and who steps up and makes a play or two and doesn't get you beat, but can also make some plays to help you win ball games. And the Hoosiers need that because Maryland's got some guards, man. Maryland has some guards that are going to get their points. And I think that's where Xavier Johnson comes in more effectively recently. And I've seen a lot of you talk about this as well, where the offense stalls out at times with him, but he's a defensive juggernaut as a guard. He may not be the best thing you've ever seen, but defensively, I think as a guard, he holds his own. I think it's a good way to put that. And with the leading scorer on Maryland being a guard, who gets that responsibility? I've said this in the past. I think that goes to Trey Galloway just because of his size and experience. I think that's something that would give head coach Mike Woodson a little bit more confidence, right, in what this team could do defensively if Trey Galloway's on their leading score versus Gabe Cupps or CJ Gunn. So I think that's where you go there when it comes to when it comes to guarding their best player. If Xavier Johnson goes, how healthy is he, right? What percentage is Xavier Johnson? A lot of questions here that we just don't know the answers to, that we're going to find out in this game, and we're going to find out over time. But you don't want him to rush back and re-injure that ankle, make it even worse. Do something even, like I said, do something even worse to it that can really prolong this injury for him. That is the last thing that you want to do here if you're this coaching staff in this program, is have Xavier Johnson out for a long period of time, especially with how last year went, where he got knocked out and wasn't playing for a massive majority of the time in the season last year. So I don't know. That's where you have a little concern, is if he does go, he obviously gives Indiana an advantage. Indiana's better with him on the floor, but I just don't know what his percentage is going to be. My prediction, I think he plays. But I think he'll be limited. And the fact that Gabe Cupps has played a lot of minutes and CJ Gunn is giving you a lot of good effort, I think you're going to see just a heavy rotation at the guard spot, which means offensively, it has to be up to Kel'el Ware. It has to be up to Malik Reneau. It has to be up to Mackenzie Mgbako and guys like Anthony Walker off the bench. The big guys have to have a game. It's time for them to eat in this game against the Maryland Terrapins and maybe go make some turtle soup and get off to a 1-0 start in Big Ten play. I appreciate you making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen each and every day. Go check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Drop them a subscription. Check it out throughout the day. It is really, really good stuff that they're doing over there. If you're on YouTube here, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Helps us out a bunch. We're pushing 1,500 subscribers. Would love to get there before the turn of the new year. And if you're on any other podcasting platform, turn on notifications, subscribe there if it's an option. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. We'll have a reaction video going up over the weekend. We'll have more football content, as there's a lot to talk about on that side of things as well with Indiana, and a look around Indiana athletics as well. That'll be coming up in the next few shows. But until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.